Welcome back to the Dazed and Confused in the Dating Pool and Why It Doesn't Have to Be That Way podcast. I am your co host, Rachel. This is my amazing co host, Mickler.
Thank you, Rachel. What's up, everyone?
And I am so excited to dive into this week's topic. But before I do, we just want to give our disclaimer that we give at the beginning of every episode. We are not dating experts. We are not dating coaches. We are not trying to be. We are not pretending to be. We are simply two Christian friends getting raw, real, and vulnerable and sharing our individual journeys of dating and what we are learning about how to honor God and others in the process. And, this one is a very meaningful topic for me because it's kind of my jam.
Mhm.
And, there's this saying that your place of pain becomes your place of rain.
Ooh.
I feel like that's really, really this one for me. And so, what we want to dive into tonight is the idea of identity integrity. And when it comes to integrity, we think of the big things, right? Like, I don't know about you, but I hear integrity and you think of like Enron. And you know what I mean? Like the big stuff where like people did not walk in integrity. I think sometimes when it comes to integrity, our minds jump to the negative and like the big stuff. Like, are you being honest? Are you lying? Are you cheating? Are you stealing? Are you all those things or boundaries or whatever? And that's part of it. But there's the saying about structural integrity, like the structural integrity of something. And what that means is there's a strength to it. It can hold up. Another definition of integrity is being congruent, being in alignment with what it actually is. And so when it comes to identity integrity, what I believe and something that I have been learning is that a really, really powerful component of integrity has to do with this idea of identity integrity and showing up in alignment and in congruence with who we are. So, I'm going to share a bunch of stories tonight because I think we can go from like various extremes to there's little subtle ways that might not realize that we're getting out of integrity, and just some of those have been coming up for me recently, just being transparent. Not only limited to dating, but in dating as well. And I think that this topic pertains to, again, far more than dating. But when it comes to dating, like, we want to be liked. We want to be loved. We want to be chosen. We want to be accepted. We want to be the one that our crush wants to pursue, right? And so, one of the things that it's really, really tempting to do, I feel like in dating in particular, is to come out of alignment with identity integrity and to alter who we are, maybe alter our personalities, etc., in order to be loved. And this starts as early as on the playground. Like you see it with kids all the time because what we want is to fit in. We want to be like everybody else. We don't want to stand out, right? We want to be the same as everybody else. We want to have the same sneakers. We want to have the same whatever. And again, without launching too much into this part of it, like my personal story is that I've always been different. I have never fit in any social circle in my entire life completely, and I probably never will. And earlier in my life, there was rejection associated with that and pain associated with that, from being like the tiniest one in the class to the ballerina who walked funny to the pastor's daughter, like you name it, I just did not fit in. And as much as I tried, and I see now that that was a gift because I wasn't made to blend in. I was born to stand out, and so were you, but I'm jumping ahead of myself. So I want to talk about, in the context of dating, some ways this shows up. So when I was in my early 20s, I fell head over heels for this guy. We were best friends. We actually shared a car. We probably spent too much time together, to be honest. We co-led a ministry. And I just thought he was the bee's knees. And he didn't see me that way. And so rather than at that point in my journey acknowledge, hey, he doesn't see a future with me, so maybe I shouldn't still be pining over him. Maybe I should say, okay, I respect that and like move on with my life. Oh no, did Rachel do that? No, I did not do that. I tried every way that I could to change myself for him. And it was subtle little things that might not seem like a lot to you, but like he made a comment maybe a couple of times, about girls' hoop earrings. At that time, I wasn't wearing hoop earrings. I went out and bought hoop earrings. His favorite color was crimson, and all of a sudden, my favorite color magically was crimson. Go figure, and like it was all of these little things that might not seem like a big deal, but if you look beneath the surface, I was feeling rejected. And I so wanted to be accepted in that moment. I wanted to be chosen. I wanted to be pursued. That rather than realize, hey, this isn't a good fit, which by the way, it wouldn't have been long term. And I still think he's awesome and we're friends. But you're in your early 20s and I was still in the throes of purity culture and the one and all kinds of other stuff. We won't go into this episode, but um just this idea of like, oh, like this must be it must be happening, and why doesn't he see me, and so if I change myself maybe he'll like me. And if I could go back and talk to 20-year-old Rachel, right, 22-year-old Rachel probably, I would just say, honey, like, you have so much going for you, you have so much to offer. And who this world and who your husband needs you to be is who you are. And when you try to change yourself for somebody else, you start to chip away at who you are. You start to forget who you are. You start to lose pieces of who you are. And, I mean, in the movie Runaway Bride, like she doesn't even know how she likes her eggs, right? Because for every guy that she's dated, like however they like their eggs, it's how she liked her eggs. And I remember watching that as a teenager with my childhood best friend and kind of laughing about it and then growing up to do it. And again, these are little things that we might not think are a big deal, but what was I doing in that moment? I was believing the lie that Rachel was not enough. And so if Rachel would change, then Rachel would be loved and accepted and chosen. And so Rachel changed, but guess what? Rachel still wasn't loved and accepted and chosen in that context. Now, fully loved, fully accepted, fully chosen in the Lord, fully loved, fully chosen, fully accepted, celebrated in my family and my friends. But in this one where I wanted it so badly, I wasn't finding it. And so just again and again and again and again and again, like things that I would do or shift about myself or my personality, or just again, sometimes they're just little tiny things that we don't realize. So that ended up coming to a halt pretty dramatically. He actually started pursuing somebody else, and that was very painful for me. And that was right before I moved back to Rochester. And I remember when I came home feeling like that season, or feeling in that season like that scene in Runaway Bride, where like she's like, Benedict, I like eggs Benedict. Like she didn't know. I think that's the one. I might be misquoting it. I forget which one she actually liked, but I'm pretty sure it's eggs Benedict. It's been a hot minute since I've seen it. And where she realized like, I don't even know. And so I came home and I had this realization of like, I don't even know what my favorite color is, because since I've been a little girl, I've changed it. Like whatever my best friend said was her favorite color was then my favorite color. And then when I was at the ballet company, my best friend there, like her favorite color became my favorite color. And then his favorite color became my favorite color. And it was like, what is my favorite color? Do I like hoop earrings? Do I like this style of dress? Do I like crimson red? Do I like beans and rice? I mean, it was just like all of these things was suddenly like, hey, wait. Who are you? Who are you, Rachel? And I had to go on this process of rediscovering who I was, because I was so focused on him seeing me and choosing me and pursuing me and shifting who I was to be loved, that I forgot who I am, and I forgot to see the beauty in myself. And I have another story, but before I do, is there anything you want to jump in with that, Mickler?
Dang, girl. Yeah, I think what you're saying, like with that journey of just like wanting to be wanted by someone else, it was like it shifted and changed who you were as a person. so you just followed through with what they wanted because you felt like you weren't enough. So that when you said that, immediately thought of like a situation of back in high school for me where I was too much for someone.
Oh,
Yeah. I was
go for
like,
it. Share that story
oh my gosh.
if you want to. If you want to,
Yeah. Okay. Dang.
go for it.
All right, let's go. Okay, so high school, I had, I was kind of like a popular kid or like, the cool kids, whatever. And, had a few of the higher desirable women or whatever. And then, like, as time went on, I was like drawn to this one girl, and we were together for like a few months, type of thing. And, yeah, like things were cool between us. And like I did some things because I really liked her that was kind of like almost out of my character, to the point where like I ended up taking my sister's car to drive to her house to give her this like book where I wrote like a poem about her. And one, I was like underage, so if my sister's watching this, she's gonna kick my booty. And then yeah, so I pulled up to her place and I was like, hey, I have this book for you, here you go, hope you like it. And then I just went back to my back to my place. And I don't know if it was immediately after this situation, but I think it was around the same time. uh like I don't know if it was a comment or something, but it was like we split, and essentially she was just like, yeah, you're too much for me. And I was like, dang, that sucks. So leading up to like every other kind of relationship afterwards, or even like sometimes now, like even when I approach dating, it's like I'm scared to be fully Mickler because I'm like, dang, am I too much for her right now? So I think, yeah, when you brought all that up, it kind of like brought this memory of like maybe how I kind of show up in dating still can be affected by that one moment in time, which was like, shoot, 15 years ago or something. I don't even know.
100%. Like this situation was 20 years ago.
Mm,
And it still impacted me in dating.
yeah.
And thankfully, I don't feel like it does anymore, at least not to that degree. But like you said, like too much, for me, it was like not enough.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And just this fear of like, oh, I'm not going to be enough. And so I want to pause before I share my next story and just like kind of percolate here a little bit. Because, like this is my jam, right? Owning your difference. And here, here are some truths. So we love that verse, I am fearfully and wonderfully made. When you look it up, it actually does not say fearfully and wonderfully. That word fearfully, by the way, is in awe of, right? That word wonderfully actually means, I'm a huge Bible nerd. I love to look up the meanings of the words in the original language. So just so you know where I'm getting this from, that word actually means differently. It means set apart so as to differentiate. So you are like in total awe of how set apart so as to differentiate, how differently you are made. You are so uniquely made. There are
Mm-hmm.
facets of God that you display that nobody else can display the way that you do. You are fearfully and differently made. You are made differently on purpose for a purpose. And, again, without getting into my whole spiel, like, not spiel, but this part of my story is that word different had so much pain associated with it for me for so much of my life. And then at 38, I had this encounter. I just feel like I'm supposed to share it. So, the morning of my 38th birthday, I woke up to the voice of shame screaming in my head. It was the voice of the enemy saying, another year older, and what do you have to show for it? What do you even have to show for your life? And that voice was almost audible in my room that morning, which is a pretty crappy way to start a birthday. And I didn't realize that, again, at 38, like there were many factors into it. I was the only single woman that I knew growing a business on my own. My business was about 2 years old at that time. And and meanwhile, all of these people in my community, particularly ladies, would ask me to coffee and say, Rachel, we just want to hear your story. You're so inspiring. And I would think, me? What's so inspiring about me? And I would go home and look in the mirror and see the girl who felt like I didn't make the cut for the lead in my own story because my life didn't look like theirs. Not realizing that what made me so inspiring to them was the same thing that was making me shameful to myself, which was being different. And so that afternoon, I had a powerful conversation I will never forget with my friend and mentor, business mentor. And it was supposed to be a regular business meeting. And he walked in and I said, do you ever question the impact that your life is really making? And he just looked at me and he was like, Rach, where is this coming from? Because we both know that whatever you're measuring yourself against is probably like has nothing to do with what truly matters to you. He said, I think you need to go home and have a conversation with God about that. And so I went home and pulled out my journal and I went on this journey with God. And he took me through these seasons of my life and revisiting these seasons of my life where different had been associated with pain and shame and rejection. And we mined out the gold in those seasons and then transitioning to adulthood and entrepreneurship and these other things, even ballet, right? Where being different, like all my friends went off to college and I joined a ballet company. Like that was not normal in my friend group. And so in these things like where it started there and then entrepreneurship and these things were different now became associated with adventure and camaraderie and experiences that other people didn't necessarily get to have in the same way or weren't having at the same time in the same way. And so he really healed and reframed that word and redefined different for me and showed me how it was actually a gift. And people talk about like what's your superpower, seeing that what my business was at the time was branding. Like I literally, and I still have a gift for this, to see and call out identity in people and what makes you different, what makes you unique, what makes you stand out. And so I was never born to fit in. I was born to stand out, and so were you. And so, because this was the calling on my life, like that's part of why I had to be different and to see that this is a gift. And in order to help other people to step into it, I had to first embrace it myself. So, that's a whole own your difference talk for another podcast, hashtag the Brand Boss Show. But, but where it ties into dating are some lessons that I learned on that journey with the Lord. And again, like asking him to show you in those seasons of pain and even rejection, like what the gold was. And so for me, even looking at the situation that I just shared with this guy that I was totally head over heels infatuated with, like, okay, but you protected me from living a life that would have been a lie, from living a life of always feeling like let's say that guy had liked me when I changed. What would that reinforce to me? Oh, so who you were was not enough, but when you changed, now you became enough for him. So then I would have to spend the rest of my life trying to show up in life as who I thought he wanted me to be. That is a crummy way to live. And God protected me from that. So whether it's that or some truths again that I learned in that season, is the only time we feel like we don't measure up is when we feel like there's something to measure against. So it's only when we feel like there's something to measure against that we feel like we don't measure up. So what are you measuring yourself against? That's not how God measures you, right? Like you are perfectly differently set apart so as to differentiate made made on purpose for a purpose. You are made different on purpose for a purpose. And there are unique facets of God and unique giftings and callings and personality aspects and all of that of who you are that there has never been before, there will never be again. And no one on earth can show up exactly the same way that you do as you. And when we try to change who we are, we actually rob this world of the gift that God sent us here to be differently on purpose for a purpose. And with that, I'll catch a breath and let you jump in, Mickler, before I go on.
No, it's interesting that you said like the measure that you're putting it against. Like I, for some reason, I have this measuring tape like right in front of my desk, and I was
I
like,
love
"Hey,
it.
what
Come
the heck?"
on. Come
but
on.
but it's almost like even I think guys, and we talked about this too, where we like measure, like for example, society and women, they say like, "Oh, guys need to be 6 feet tall," and it's
No,
like,
that's a bunch of
you know,
crap.
I know.
Anyway, we've had that conversation.
Yeah. No, but I love what you're saying. It was like has literally made us different. But I think growing up and the things that we experience, for some reason, we want to be like everyone else or
Well,
similar to
yeah,
them because of.
because I mean, there's peer pressure, but let's also call a spade because the enemy knows that if he can keep you from showing up in the fullness of who you are, then he
Mm,
can hold back the gift that you are, the impact that you're here to make in the world, and the unique facets of God that you display. If he can keep you playing small, then he can keep you from having impact. And the only person who can keep you from having impact is yourself.
boom.
And so he gets you to believe, oh, I'm too much. Oh, I'm not enough. Oh, I couldn't possibly show up as who I am. And so when we believe that lie about ourselves, then we don't show up fully as who we are. And we do a disservice to the world and to the people that we love, whether that's in our families or our friendships or in dating or in our businesses, by the way, which is a different conversation. So another thing that a dear friend of both of ours says, Julia Winston, is the one of the reasons that we feel like we can't be who we are, right? Is we feel like we won't be accepted. We
Mm,
won't be loved, we won't be chosen, right? In the context of dating, but in
mhm.
life. And I heard her say this one time and I was like, dang. It was actually on the Brand Boss Show podcast. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. Anyway,
Shameless plug. Let's go, Auntie
shameless
J.
plug. There's 3 years of content there for you to dig into. Enjoy. So she said this. So Julia Winston said this. The only reason that we're afraid that it won't be accepted or we believe that it won't be accepted is because we don't believe it ourselves. We don't accept it ourselves. So, us believing that somebody else won't accept it or won't like it or won't choose it is us actually believing that about ourselves, like believing that we're not enough or believing that we're too much. And I was like, dang. Yeah, it's true. It's true because if we actually didn't believe that, then we wouldn't worry about whether or not it would be accepted or whether it would be too much or not enough or whatever, you know? So I think that I really do. I think it's a lie of the enemy that um, we sometimes very subtly buy into and don't even realize it. And it has to stem, particularly in the dating context, from our desire to be loved and accepted and chosen and pursued, and particularly by our crush, right? And so, again, sometimes these are little tiny ways, and sometimes they're bigger ways. So, I want to dive into some of the bigger ways right now. So, years ago, I was in a very serious relationship. I was actually engaged to this man, and he very much tried to make me somebody other than who I was and made it very clear that who I was not fully desirable to him. And in this context, a lot of it did have to do with purity, but it didn't start there. There were other things involved. So I love adventure. I love exploring. I love being outside. One thing that I am absolutely not, like, don't get me wrong, I do also like relaxing nights at home, but I'm not going to live my life in front of a TV. And he did. And I found myself spending more and more in time with him in front of the TV just because I wanted to spend time with him. And at that time, I thought I was doing the loving thing and the loving future wife thing and meeting him where he was at, there's some truth in that, but not when it causes me to operate out of alignment with my identity of who I am. And so rather than like at first I would beg him, I'd be like, "Hey, can we go outside? Can we go for a walk? Can we do anything besides watch freaking TV?" Like I don't even love TV that much. I don't. I don't even own a TV right now. Um and a lot of the shows that he watched were not shows that I enjoyed or found edifying, to be honest. And that's we'll get to that in a second. But so that's kind of where some of these breakdowns started happening for me was rather than like, hey, I'm going to live my life and I'm going to do what I love. And like, if you don't want to be a part of it, that's your choice. And probably realizing at that point, like, maybe this isn't a great fit. Um, I caved. I caved to do what he wanted and what I thought he wanted and what I thought would be accepted and chosen and all that stuff. And so that was kind of some little ways. And then let's talk about like the content of the shows, right? Like I am very intentional about how I steward myself, body, soul, and spirit. And I am a big believer, garbage in, garbage out. And some of the stuff that he loved to watch, I didn't find funny and I didn't enjoy. And some of it actually like really made me upset. And he would purposely start putting things on that he knew that I didn't like. Like we'd start off watching some nature show or travel show or whatever that he knew I would like. And then he would switch it and he'd just kind of watch me and watch what I did and kind of push it. And rather than speak up, I stayed quiet. And again, like there's a whole lot more to this story, but just even in that, even talking about it, I just see little ways that it was like chipping away at my integrity of who I am and how I show up. And then there were bigger things, right? And then honestly, it came to sexual things that he tried to push me into. Um and it was really, really hard for a lot of reasons at the time. And I won't go into all of that. But like I said, I was still in the throes of purity culture and the belief that this is the one. And so if he's the one, if I don't marry him, then I'm never going to get married and blah, blah, blah. And so God can change his heart. And anyway, whole other story for a different episode. But because of that, I morphed myself more than I ever should have. And I didn't even notice all of the ways that I was morphing myself at the time. But I just want to point out that, like, that really crossing the line that I was pushed up to the point of started with sitting watching TV on his couch when it was a beautiful day and I would have much rather been taking a walk outside. And so these little chips away at our integrity when we're not showing up in alignment with who we are, it does a couple of things. One of the things that it does is it chips away at our confidence, right? Because if this is who I am and I know this and I say this is who I am, and this is not how I'm showing up in life, then there's some cognitive dissonance there. And subconsciously, you kind of start to question and believe, like, is this really who I am? And so it chips away at your confidence. It chips away at your courage, right? And your courage to stand up and be who you are when you feel like, oh, well, that might be rejected. And maybe I just have to fit in and just do what I think, this person wants or who this person wants me to be. And then it also chips away at, I guess I'm going to say, our resolve and our boundaries because, again, like it started small, but it blossomed into bigger things. And if I had seen it and nipped it at the bud, then first of all, that relationship might not have lasted as long as it did. And also, again, when you chip away at one part of your integrity, like it can lead to other stuff and you can find yourself faced with decisions that you never even thought, like you thought it would be a no-brainer for you. But because of these continual compromises in the integrity of your identity of who you are, whether it's what you believe, what you like to do, how you show up in the world, what your favorite color is. I mean, that's kind of maybe a silly one, but like whenever we're not showing up in alignment with who we are, whenever we're showing up not in the integrity of who we are, it just chips away at that little bit by little bit by little bit by little bit. So when it comes to the bigger things, what you believe, what your morals are, what your character is, like it's crazy how fast you can find yourself faced with a decision like, whoa, wait a minute, like I never thought that would even be in question for me. How did I get here? Well, you got there by these tiny little things that seem tiny at the time that really add up over time. So, again, when it comes to identity integrity, like walking out of alignment with your identity can cause you to walk out of alignment with your, larger scale integrity if you're not careful. And so, whether it's your personality, like, again, I want to kind of caveat this a little bit because in relationships, like there is compromise and, we do want to learn other people's hobbies and interests and like share things together. And that's part of two becoming one. That's part of making a life together, right? Whether you're in a dating relationship, moving towards marriage or in marriage, like that's part of it. So, things they enjoy, whatever, like that you end up sharing together, even if it wasn't something that you necessarily loved on your own. Like, shout out to all the husbands that watch Pride and Prejudice, right? Like, not saying that they necessarily love it, but they do it. So there is some of that. But when it becomes this how you're showing up in life as out of alignment with who you are, I think we just have to be really, really careful because those little changes, those little compromises, those seemingly little things of stepping out of integrity with our identity of who we are can set us up for bigger things, can cause confusion, can cause resentment. Because that was the other thing. Like, whenever we show up as somebody who we're not, then we're actually showing up as a lie. And whenever you live a lie, eventually the truth will come out. And so either the truth comes out in a way that hurts somebody or hurts you, or you inside, like inside your gut knows that this is not who I am. And at some point it like rah, comes bubbling to the surface. Or if you stuff it, then there's this resentment of like, ugh, like I don't get to be who I am. But the reality is you chose that for yourself. And I think in dating, that's why it's so, so important to be in alignment with who we are and to remember that who the other person and the person who is going to choose us, let me put it that way, needs and wants us to be is exactly who we are because you were designed differently on purpose for a purpose. What would you say to that, Mickler?
That's a lot.
That is a lot.
I don't know. I guess for me, I was just trying to like think about some examples of where this could have popped up for me in this situation. And I'm almost like tying it to like my last relationship that I had as a believer because everyone before that was like pre-believer. So this one, like she was a little bit long distance. We FaceTimed a lot. We tried to meet together and things like that. And I wanted to show up more and be with her, spend more time. But my family, like almost that dynamic in that situation, didn't allow me to show up in that way. So I feel like maybe I was not having integrity because like I don't know. Now I'm almost like tying it back to what I said earlier about like, oh, being too much. Like, I think Mickler wanted to show up and be there for the girl even more so and like yeah, spend time with her, go on dates, do little these sweet things. But it was like I was like hiding if she was like gonna call me or FaceTime or I'd go walk to my car, even though like instead of just talking to her where she was, like because my family was around, I was like, oh, are they gonna judge me? Are they like gonna be worried that now all of a sudden
Ooh.
Mickler's gonna be taken away, you know?
So you were worried that if you showed up, because family is very important to you and family is a very big part of your life. And
Yeah.
so you were worried that if she saw you in that context, then it would be over.
No, no, no. She was accepting. It was almost like because my family didn't see me in that context of like, oh, Mickler's putting himself out there again, and there's actually a girl who's interested in
Oh,
him. I was scared to show up like,
for
oh,
them.
yeah, because of them, like the pressure. But I think that hindered me from being that Mickler who wants to show love and affection and, you know, like being my authentic self with the girl because I was scared to get judged by my family. So maybe and then I my
Mm.
integrity was compromised in my identity because I wasn't showing up fully. So maybe that could have been a reason why things didn't really work out because she had felt that was like a thing, like a instead of it being between me and her, like the relationship, there was other people kind of like speaking into it in a
Yeah.
sense. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
well, and that's real, and I think that I mean, whenever we show up as who we're not, deep inside we know,
mm,
and other
yeah.
people can feel that whether we
Mhm.
realize it or not. Like,
Yeah.
there will be a disconnect, you know? And so, I think that, can I nerd out on brain science for a little bit?
Of course. I mean,
So so again, like, this is my topic, identity. Come on. But,
let's go.
there's actually brain science to back this up that I learned from a neuroscientist, neurosurgeon, shout out to Darlene Mayo, that inside of our brains, there is an identity center. And that identity center, like, we're born with it. And then over time, experiences that we have, things that we come to believe, whatever, kind of weave these neural pathways that become almost like a web that keep us from living out of our identity center. And here's the thing, everybody has that identity center. So, people whose identity center resonates with your identity center will be drawn to you. And normally I talk about this in the context of business. This is life. So, this applies to dating too, right? So, people whose identity resonates with your identity are drawn to you. But when you show up inauthentic, when you are not operating out of that true identity of who you are, of who God made you to be on whatever level, they will feel the disconnect and they might not even be able to articulate it clearly, but they'll feel it and it will turn them away and it will actually repel people who are being attracted to you because what was attracting them to you is that their identity center was resonating with your identity center. It's not woo, it's brain science, right? Like their identity was resonating with some facet of your identity, but because you were showing up inauthentic to that, it actually drove them away. It actually repelled them. Now, the flip side of this, I love because when we do the work ourselves and undo those neural pathways and decide, I'm going to show up in the fullness and the truth of who I am, it actually has the power to jailbreak the brains of the people around us. So people who are attracted to you because their identity center resonates with yours and you are showing up in authenticity, it starts to undo those neural pathways that have been blocking them from living in their identity so that they can come to a place of living their identity as well. So when we show up in authenticity, in the truth of who we are, we actually help jailbreak the brains of the people around us to show up in the truth of who we are as well. And you know, you've experienced this. Have you ever met somebody where you're like, man, I just really feel like I can be myself around that person? Why? Because that person is genuine and authentic and showing up fully as who he or she is, which is what is making you feel like, oh, I can just be who I am. Their authenticity is giving you freedom and permission and even doing things in your brain to show up in authenticity yourself. And so when we show up in authenticity in dating, this is what we get to do for the people that we're dating. This is what we get to do for the other people in the dating pool, the people around us, for our friends, for our family. But when we show up inauthentically, it will actually repel people that would have been otherwise attracted to us. And so, anyway, let me take a breath there for a second. Go ahead, jump in, Mickler, and then I got some more.
No, I think Joseph Wilson on the last podcast was talking about this too. You know, it's like it almost like on a woo woo perspective, like we are kind of like on a different wavelength. And the thing that, you know, in the spirit, what we put out there, like people can pick up on this. So
100%.
Yeah, maybe if we're coming out thinking like, "Oh, I'm not good enough," or "I am too much," these people are like, "Oh yeah, they are." You know, like, "Oh
So,
yeah, is that
yeah,
the"
well, so let's talk filters, right? Everybody talks about filters on dating apps.
Oh my
Okay?
gosh. Yeah,
Ev
let's talk about it.
Okay, let's talk about it. So, even before getting on tonight, like, there's a little option on StreamYard, like, touch up your appearance, and I was like, "Oh, I'm curious, let's see what this is." Do you know what it did? It took my freckles away. And I was like, "So you're saying that me with freckles is a
Isn't that
blemish,
mm,
but me without freckles is attractive? Is that what you're saying to me right now?"
dang.
Because, like, I'm a very freckly woman, shout out to my English Irish showing. And so, like, that's part of who I am, and I don't hide that. And so I was just thinking about that. I was like, well, this is kind of perfect timing. So when people get so annoyed, right, about people using filters or AI or whatever in their dating profiles, what is it that you're really annoyed with? It's not the filters itself. It's people presenting a version of themselves that's not who they really are.
That's right. No.
But
Oh.
are we doing the same thing? Maybe it's not in a
Mm.
photo, maybe it's in a conversation. Maybe
Oh.
it's in a pretending you're okay with something that you're not okay with. Maybe it's in a, "Oh, yeah, I love skiing," when you actually have never been in your life, or like, just these, like, again, some of them are more extreme than others. And there's places to learn each other's hobbies and all that kind of stuff. Don't hear what I'm not saying. But when you are changing who you are, right? Or, oh, I might be too outspoken for this person, or I might be too Christian for them, or I might be too, whatever. I mean, like, you can run the gamut, like, I like eggs Benedict and they hate eggs Benedict. I don't know, like, whatever
Mm.
it is. But whenever we're making a decision to show up in a way other than who we are in hopes that that version will be accepted, you just put a filter on.
I know. I was about to like crap on the girls that I see, and it's like, yo, yeah, why you have the filter? You literally put a picture of yourself with no makeup, and I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Next story is like straight up filter, and it's like, okay, I guess you look pretty, but it was like that's not really you. But like what you're saying is almost like what I was convicted on. Is I've kind of had this like I don't know, struggle of like, do I present right from the beginning, like I do have a son, or do I not? You know, and like I've played with that kind of thing before, and yeah, I don't know. I try to put it out there. I try to make it clear, and it's like maybe it's not clear enough. So then I don't know.
Well,
It's so
for you
weird.
to be like not saying anything about him,
Oh
you
no,
have
yeah,
a son.
no, 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 for sure, for sure. No, but
So,
it's on my profile and all of them. I have, it says, that option or whatever, like
yeah,
has children. It's
all
there.
of them. I just had to mess with you about that. I just had to mess with you about that.
I know. All the different apps. I'm like, yo, I think I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore.
I hear that. I'm not on any. But yeah, I just keep coming back to the conversation you and I have had multiple times, right? Of that powerful scene in The Lion King where
Mm.
Simba, and this is kind of where I want to take things next, where Simba has been rejected and feels like he murdered his father and has been told that he murdered his father. And so he's run away and he's hiding from his identity. He's hiding from his destiny. And he looks into the water and you see all these stars. And then all of a sudden, it's the face of Mufasa saying, "Simba, remember who you are." I can't say it like James Earl Jones, but
A for effort.
thank you. But remember who you are. Remember who you are. Remember who God has uniquely, differently, perfectly designed and molded and fashioned you to be. When we come into these situations where there is rejection, it can be really easy to want to hide. It can be really easy to feel like something's wrong with me. I'm too much. I'm not enough, whatever. And in those moments, I pray that you hear the voice of your Father over you. Remember who you are. Remember who you are, because who this world needs you to be is exactly who you are. So whether it's on a first date or after a breakup, or putting yourself out there to begin with, saying hello to that person you find attractive at church, whatever it is, remember who you are, and remember to show up as who you are. Because again, whenever we don't show up as who we are, or whenever we play small and don't show up as fully who we are, we're not remembering the fullness of who we're made to be. And so remember, you are a son of God. You are a daughter of God. You are made in his image. You are called, created, and chosen. You are made differently on purpose for a purpose. You have an impact in this world that no one else has like you do. You are a person of integrity. You are a person of honor. You are a person of joy. You are a person who has the solutions that the people around you need. You are a person of love. Like whatever it is, whatever the facets are of God that you display in a way that nobody else does. Remember who you are, and remember that to play small actually robs this world of the beauty and the majesty of the unique facets of God that you were uniquely fashioned and created to display in a way that no one can. What do you want to say to that, Mickler?
I want to cry.
Do
No, so no, literally,
it.
like,
Real men cry. While you do that, I'm going to look something up quick.
yeah, no, and it's powerful what you're saying, Rachel, because this literally happened to me where I on this dating app, things were going good. It's in the conversation, we're flirting and stuff, and then we escalated to be like, hey, let's FaceTime. So we had that scheduled. And then in the morning, she texted me, and I guess she did her research of, like, I don't know, go to my Instagram or something. She was like, "Oh yeah, morning. I saw that you have kids, which is great, but I have plans to like leave California once I'm done with school, and so she's gonna cancel." And initially, I was just like, "Okay, cool, do your thing." And I felt all right with it. But as the day kind of progressed, I was like, dang, that sucks. And I started to realize like a lot of the past lies were coming up, like, oh, because I have a child, like I'm defective, or I have baggage, or no one wants me because I have a different, like, or responsibility, all these different things. And I tried to remember who I was, like I'm completely accepted in Christ. But even that feeling of rejection, it was like, why didn't she even just give me a chance to show her, It was like I had to reach out to my dear friend Rachel, and then she was just hitting me with them identity verses.
Come
And
on.
yeah, it was just like, I encourage you guys, if you don't have like, if you're in that place, like reach out to one of their friends that who can speak that life into you, instead
Yes.
of just like, you can revert to like some of your prophetic words and identity verses and stuff. But if you find yourself kind of still struggling and not having that breakthrough of remembering who you are, like reach out to a friend who could speak that into you. Because once Rachel was like showering me with like, all these things, I was just like, felt way better, way lifted up, So it was awesome. And it's interesting that you bring up these references to like movies, because that's like why I kind of like tear up in these odd movies, like with Marvel, Captain Marvel, because like her friend was there and she was like, "You're Carol Danvers," and I was just like, ah. And then in Wakanda, I mean, Black Panther, he's fighting, he's a king, he's stripped of his power, and then he's fighting for that throne or that kingdom, and then he's about to lose, but off in the distance, his mom's like, "Remember who you are." And then he's like, boom, he knocks the guy out, and then he kind of reclaims it. Another one was like Kung Fu Panda 3. Like the reason why like these people, these pandas stepped into who they were, then like when they understood that they're unique things, like I don't know, one was like a flag twirler, the ones could like roll really well. Once they kind of like embraced that they were different and they were unique, it was like that's when they became so powerful. So
Totally.
again.
One of my favorites is How to Train Your Dragon. And Hiccup
Mm.
wanted more than anything else to be like all the other Vikings and to fit in.
That's right.
But it was actually his difference that, spoiler alert, saved his entire village, his entire world at that moment, right?
Mm.
And no one else could have done it like Hiccup. And if he had been like all the other Vikings, his whole village would have perished, and the dragons too. And so it was him who his world needed him to be was Hiccup. And so many times we want to change ourselves. Again, we feel like, well, I'm too much, or I'm not enough, or I've been rejected, or I might be rejected, or I couldn't show up fully as who I am, or all this stuff, or I'm just different. Yes, you are. You are made differently on purpose for a purpose.
Yeah.
Own it. Own who God uniquely made you to be, because that is who the people in your life that you are going to touch need you to be. And by the way, that includes your future husband, your future wife. Like, God didn't miss a detail. He cares about the details and he doesn't miss one. And so if you're worried about something like, oh, well, maybe God specifically made that about you because that's going to drive that person wild. Like, you don't know. You don't know, in a good way, I mean.
Yeah, yeah.
And so like he cares about the details. He knows how uniquely he's fashioned us. And I fully believe like that he has in every way, shape, and form prepared us and designed us for who we're going to be with. Now, I don't believe in the lie of the one. That's a whole topic for another episode. But as you are partnered together, like you're going to see, wow, like this facet of who I am and this facet, wow, they mesh and they're just really
Mm.
powerful together. And some things that you might think are like awful, they're going to fall in love with. Like another great movie is Hitch, right? And so like you
I
have
love that movie.
I do too. And so you have like Hitch totally bombs his date, and she
Mm.
was like, he really tanked. And her friend is like, and that's attractive to you? And she was like, yeah, that's kind of cute. And then like you have Alexa Cole, this glamorous woman who like loves the fact that, Albert is quirky and
Mhm,
like,
mhm.
and things about his quirks. She was like, you really did your research on me that I can't whistle and that I, can't dance and da da da. And he was like, no, actually, I didn't, and they were just
Mm.
quirks about him that made her feel like, oh, these quirks about me aren't so weird. So again, we're talking movies, but like these stories, if when Albert did try to show up like he thought Alexa wanted her to, isn't when she fell for him. It's
Mhm,
when he spilled mustard on himself. It's
mhm.
when he taught her how to whistle. It's when like these little moments, Hitch, like the sleek, suave, whatever. It was when he ripped his shirt off in the taxi, and like got, food poisoning at the seafood place. Like, not the glamorous moments that they fell for each other. And I think so many times, obviously in dating, you want to put your best foot forward. But if you're going to spend your life with somebody, you're going to see the good, the bad, and the ugly. Like, it's real. It's
Mhm,
doing real life together. It's doesn't get more authentic than that. And so why would you start yourself on that journey in a way that's not authentic to begin with? At some point the truth's going to come out. You're either going to be resentful, or you're going to break their trust, or you're going to be breaking your trust internally, which sets you up for bigger things down the line.
mhm.
So yeah, what would you say? And then I have something to land the plane.
Yeah, no, I think it's important too. Like just a reminder of like these quirks that we have. Like even though one person says no to you, like embrace it still. Like
that could be what the next person falls in love with you over.
Yeah, yeah. Unless it's yeah.
Seriously. No, for real, Mickler. Like, seriously, like the next woman who comes along could be like, "You're such an awesome dad, and I just
Yeah,
really love that about you," you know? And
yeah.
I already believe your wife's gonna say that to you. So, like, what made it feel like, "Oh, I got rejected because I have a kid," could be the very thing that attracts the woman that God does have for you,
Yeah.
you know?
Right.
So, I just want to read this. Can I read a quote over
Mhm.
us, or everybody who's listening right now? All right. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There is nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine as children do. We were born to manifest the glory of God that is within us. And it's not just in some of us, it's in everyone. As we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. It's from Marianne Williamson, A Return to Love, one of my favorite quotes.
Jeez. No more playing small, y'all. I'm even for myself.
No more playing small, no more hiding behind filters, whether it's in your conversations or your compromises or your
Mm,
photos.
mm,
It's time to show up in the fullness of who we are so that, first of all, we're showing up in truth. And also, we give other people permission to do the same.
yeah. Dang. Cool. We good?
That's what it means to walk in identity integrity. Yeah, I think we just landed that plane.
Cool. If this was super encouraging for you, we would appreciate it that you like this video, share it with someone who's on a similar journey of dating and they want to do it a kingdom way. And yeah, if you guys have any ideas or any topics that you guys want us to talk about, leave them in the comments below. We would much appreciate it. And yeah, until the next
Subscribe.
one, subscribe too. That's right. All right, y'all. Till the next